Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Guess what? We're doing a new spectating episode, and this is going to be what I'm going to call a welcome back to rank or beginner series. Okay, I've been getting an influx, a major influx of people discussing I'm struggling in ranked. I don't know when to rotate. I don't know when to push another team. We're going to have all the answers here. I'm going to talk about it. And the first part, you're going to see me play, which I know isn't the spectating part, but we're going to spectate the rest of the lobby. So you understand the end zones, where mistakes are happening, and what's going on. It's all going to be done in real time. This is done in one single take because I am that confident that I can educate and teach you the flow of ranked in just one go around. Now, everything is timestamped in the description down below. I'll try to highlight those moments of whenever you can rotate and what you can do. I'm going to just pick a horizon. Now, this is going to be between gold and platinum because that is where most players are getting stuck. If you feel like, oh, I was a diamond player before, why am I now only a plat or gold? My best advice is that imagine all the ranks are lower. It takes more time to rank up than ever before. That's because there's less points going around. Because top 5 really matters across the board. So that's why lobbies are slower, because everyone does want to get that placement. Doesn't mean you can't play aggressively, but you have to know when and how. So that's what we're going to break down for today. Gold and platinum. Let's get into it. The first thing you saw is that not all POIs are treated equally as much as they try to. It really does surprise me that they don't fill up all the named POIs first. I've already given them that feedback in prior videos. I guess it is just what it is. Now, whenever you land, what we're going to teach first is one of the basics. Everything's going to feel like basics here, but it's all important because people have thrown out fundamentals out the window, which is really strange to me. So what we're going to do is you want to be able to land on either an arsenal or where you're going to find your loadout. Your goal is to find a rotation of what you're trying to do. If my teammate's landing over there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to land on this side over here and loot, and I'm going to try to get my loadout as fast as humanly possible and then rotate towards them. Now, this is the moment at the start where you could choose to pretty much say, I'm good to go, and you start rotating and then fighting, right? This is a small window, right? If you decide to push. But I'm going to pretty much get through here, and this is one of those POIs that just isn't good, that encourages you pretty much to fight pretty early on, because you're not going to have too much at your disposal besides the arsenals. That's really all you got. So right now I have my mid to long range, which is the rampage. I'm going to swap this whenever I go over the shotgun over here. I'm going to loot this building right here. I'm going to loot this other one right here. At this point, you should be pretty much good to go. Let's put a 2x on this. Go on the second floor. Notice how all the loot paths are pretty much similar, right? Now, I could go for the RE45 if I want to, but I'm actually going to grab the Peacekeeper in the scenario. I'm not a big fan of using this other gun, unfortunately. I think my sensitivity is wrong. No, it's right. I just felt a little off for some reason. Getting off of work sometimes can do that. But you notice how I went through all the main items, and then this moment right here, feel this out. When you see about 20 to maybe 30 seconds on the clock remaining, this is pretty much where you're either rotating to fight, and you know who landed in which area to pretty much go and fight, or you're rotating and rotating to the proper zone. Now, if you don't have a recon legend, that's not ideal, so you don't know where people are rotating, or a console legend. We're running 2 support and we're running a horizon, meaning that we should probably play a little bit more aggressive. What I'm going to do, since we seem to be more in zone, is I'm going to switch over to the longbow, just for consistency's sake for now, and I have the Peacekeeper for my close range, right? Now, we can start rotating over here. Notice how nobody's died in the lobby. On the upper right, this is where that window was, right? The good teams are going to start pushing. You'll notice around gold to plat that nobody really fights at all, right? But as it starts to scale up, you'll notice that will start to change. I didn't mean to pick up the 2x. It's unfortunate he went down. Who uses a 2x with this? I'm the psychopath for doing this. Alright, if we get eliminated, it's not at the end of the world, because then we can talk about flow. This is the first fight, and this is going to get thirded here in just a few seconds if we don't make a play, which is pretty much now. Alright, we're pretty much eliminated here. And then we get spectate. There you go. Alright, now we get to watch. So you found that window, right? This is the window you either are going to fight and make a play or not, right? And unfortunately, this didn't work out. Our other person got knocked pretty early. I could have done a few things. I could have pushed on the person I cracked. I went back for the Mirage. I heard he was fighting. I could have rotated and fought on his side as well, and now we get to spectate. We were the first team that fought. This is such a good example where you didn't have to fight early, right? it's not necessary. But keep in mind, we had 2 supports, and then we had me on Horizon technically on entry, and I didn't really entry all that great. And that's a whole different conversation. But this goes to show of that timing, right? Because now this team has all the time in the world to kind of breathe because they have their KP, but they also need to rotate into zone, which they already hit the console. Now, the next question you have is like, what can I do in this scenario at this point, right? Let's say that your team has already done a good amount of damage and so forth. Like, I guess the only person who could have done more is that. And we look at this team. See, it's usually this, the Watson is the one that popped off there. Shout out to the Watson. A fellow Watson player I'm always excited to see, right? Whenever you're in the scenario, there's 2 things you can do, okay? We already talked about the first window here, and I'll try to timestamp them. Do you rotate or do you fight? So if you were going to fight, it would have been around that 20 to 30 second mark, and you rotate and you go clean this up pretty quick. If that fight stalled it any longer, then this team could have rotated over, or this team maybe could have rotated over. It's less likely to happen if the zone is pulling this way, because everyone's going to start to rotate towards the zone. Now, this team had 2 choices of what they could have done. They could either continue to loot here and just kind of keep taking their time and wait, because then they start to play edge, or they go to find their power position in center of zone, right? Now, you may be asking, what is the power position in zone, right? We know that it's not going to pull here. That's very unlikely. We don't think it's going to pull towards Shipyard or Arcade. It's not going to pull there. Why? Because most of the zone isn't there, and these spots are impossible to pretty much be. It could pull here on the right. It could pull here on the left. It could pull here on this area, which means that this building here is a great power position, and maybe this spot is okay. I would probably go for more of the less the buildings are power plays, God spots, if you will. Now, the reason why those are more powerful to hold if you're planning to do end zone is because they're a great vantage point. They're great to block out teams. And let's take a look what this team is doing. This team is deciding to kind of play edge and kind of keep the fighting going. Now, they have zone information, so they're kind of giving that up. And this is a scenario where it's like, should we fight? Well, it's debatable if you should fight. I mean, if they got momentum, they got kills, why not? Their loadouts are pretty solid, 30-30 and Peacekeeper. That's a good loadout. Look how notice everyone's playing the Peacekeeper. If you're curious on the best guns, I've already covered that in terms of ranked. They got their first knock, they reset. Now they go for the Halo for the reses here. They could probably pop both of them up quickly. I think the other team also had a lifeline, which is unfortunate. Yep. Not necessarily the cleanest opening, and that's okay. And this other person's just going to pretty much run. And they're getting thirded, I think, at the moment, too. Yep. So there's a great moment here to teach. When you're fighting, why does it seem like I'm getting third party right away? Well, the reason why, the biggest indicator, is that the zone is already closing. If the zone is already closing, that's probably one of the biggest red flags that a team is going to be pushing onto you. Okay? Because everyone is moving around the map. If we look around the map, like I said, where everyone, if there's 16 squads, the likelihood of you getting thirded is really, really high. So if you're going to fight, you want to fight more or less at the very beginning of that encounter. This person's taking the opportunity while they're distracted to go for res. It's pretty smart because they are distracted and they could, in theory, come back in and clean it up. Now, if they were to clear their backs after this fight, that is the perfect moment, meaning that they can confidently say that most of this team, we're eliminated. One team got eliminated here. If they clear this, that this side of the map is most likely going to be clear, right? That's what I call like Sherlock Holmesing. This, you know, in theory, what could have happened or how many teams are going to be nearby. Now, most people in terms of gold or plat are always shocked when they fight there and they're like, why did we get thirded? Why are you fighting when the zone is closing and you didn't get a clean enough entry or knock? Meaning that you're kind of going for 50-50. That's okay if you're in comms and your team is just very confident across the board on a 50-50. That's not bad, but what happens when you have this is that I call these dog piles. Dog piles tend to happen in multiple areas of the map. There could be another one that formulates here, or maybe in center zone as everyone just starts happening. It just so happens that this one is occurring on the outside of the zone. So there's a few things this team could do. There's another decision here, right? Do we go to zone or do we fight? I would say there's nothing wrong with fighting here, especially when they believe that they should have the advantage. If they clear their backs, that's great. If they're no longer confident and they don't have the resources, like that's a great knock. That's a great indicator, clear knock, that they should fight. Even if this person's underneath them, great damage. This Watson's popping off. Holy. I love it. And they still, I mean, this isn't bad. They can still recover this. They got 2 knocks. What they should do is reset, secure the other 2 knocks. Now, there's also a reason why I say secure. There's a lot of altars in play. And you got to be careful to ensure that people don't take fallbacks. Make sure you are aware of the composition. If you see they have lifelines, they're most likely going to res fast. If they have altars, they're mostly going to fall back. So keep in mind the composition that your enemy team is playing and make those callouts. That's another great tip that's very helpful. It's interesting that we're mostly focusing on fundamentals here, right? And as the lobby keeps progressing, it starts to feel more and more like scrims as people stay alive for the end zones. That's one of the most common themes that I've been seeing, is that it feels more like scrims or ALGS, and we're just seeing clusters at the end. If you're not seeing clusters at the end, then you are clearing your back on these areas and you're getting rid of early fights. And there's two things that can happen where early games are boring, or your mid game, like right now, is going to be boring. Because after a while, everyone is cleaned up on this side of the map and there's just nothing that's going to happen statistically unless some weird team ran across the map and then started fighting you, right? Is now they're kind of back in looting territory. And their loadouts are all pretty strong. The weakest one I would say here that's probably not the strongest is the R3 and Sentinel. Why do I say that's not a strong loadout? Well, what you're trying to do is you want to get your mid to long range, and then you want to have a close range. The R301 can be, in theory, used for close range if it's got the gun shield, but you got nothing close range unless you are a demigod with the Sentinel and you create crazy openings and you just want to, you know, live it up like a pro player, which is... can happen. That is a viable strat. But at the same time, having these two loadouts, having an R99 or Peacekeeper RE45 is going to be much more beneficial. They looked at the guns, by the way, and there's also Peacekeeper on the left-hand side. So the fact that I'm not grabbing that, we're going to keep spectating this person. I'm going to showcase why this loadout is not as effective. You've already seen it being effective with the Watson. The Watson was able to poke at long range and then clean up at close range, and so you have that versatility and that power. I mean, you saw me earlier. I was using a 2x with a Peacekeeper at mid-range, and it just does an insane amount of damage. It's pretty wild. But then the Skull Piercer on the 30-30 right here, you see the mid to long range. Now let's take a look at what the lifeline is going to do here. They should be really effective to mid to long range, but when this team rotates in, that's going to be a bigger problem. I would probably at that point, based on the recoil control that I saw, I would probably recommend using the Sentinel instead. Now, the other tip I would provide as well is when you're caught in this scenario, to make sure that you're actually rotating into zone, or do you have the intention to gate? So you ask the question constantly, which one are you going to do? Are you going to gate or are you going to rotate? In this scenario, they're kind of opting for the gate, right? And this is prime example of why I mentioned, like, imagine just using the Peacekeeper there. Maybe their confidence isn't as strong with the R301, but that's the prime example. I just had to stop what I was saying there to kind of mention that this is where the problem arises. It's not a bad thing to gate. I always say, and take this as a big takeaway, there is never a right or wrong unless you're doing it by yourself. You have to do it with your team. If you're asking the question, well, it seems like my team isn't corroborating or not with me, then you have to slow down. If they're pushing forward and being really aggressive, then you have to speed up. Every team is a little different. I always make the joke that it feels like you're speed dating, because you are, if you're solo queuing, because you never know what you're going to get yourself into. This lifeline, I just want to highlight with this loadout, is definitely struggling. I think that the Watson is definitely the hardest carry for this team, and it was very apparent when we ran into them earlier. Now, because they're kind of mid to long range, they're going to run into a scenario where they're going to get clustered here. They have to clean up these fights pretty quick, so you have to make the hard decision. Are we going to push, and are we going to play aggressively, or are we going to rotate again? Because it's taking a while, it actually would be better if they had rotated and made a smarter decision rather than just staying in it here. But again, doing stuff together. I'm glad that we're not seeing a team, or essentially them not just spread out and leave each other, because that would be the worst case scenario, right? Now, they're not focusing the same thing, but they are using your utility. Let's compliment the lifeline for just actually rezzing. I think that's a really big positive. Maybe they're not using the right loadout. I don't think that this lifeline is bad. I just don't think they're setting themselves up for success. You see that? The R99 versus the R301, even though they, in that moment, landed more of their shots, they're going to lose that encounter. Play the numbers game, ladies and gentlemen. When it comes to rank, don't put yourself at a massive disadvantage. I believe that they had the Peacekeeper there and they were peeking them, they would have had an easier time than trying to shoot the R301 back and forth, back and forth. That's just kind of how it's going to happen. That's why your loadout's so important. Now, maybe they stay too long there. I think that the only thing they could have done there is just focus fired and then shot together. It kind of felt like the course of that fight, one was going in, then another was going in. Keep awareness of what your team is doing and make the decision from there. Because now the biggest issue is like, okay, well, now you're playing edge, but most teams that are in the center, they went out, and guess what? They haven't gotten that many points. Look at the Wraith's points right here, okay? They have 4 eliminations, 1 assist, and then 4, the 3 hands, and people use another term for that, right? Comment down below if you know what I'm talking about. Only 29 points. Top 5 is so instrumental to getting points. Now 53. That's a lot of KP for not having much to show for it, right? Know when to stop. At some point, you got to know when to stop and when the fight is an uphill battle, and whether you're kind of in a losing scenario. R301 R99 is not the worst loadout either. Of course, the only downside of this loadout is ammo economy. You'll notice in the bottom right, you'll see that their ammo's a little tight. This is a ballsy choice by the Wraith. He's kind of assuming he's solo. I guess wow, a Christopher Walken here. I didn't realize that he was solo. My infamous Christopher Walken. I don't think I've ever done it in a video. That's the best I got. Doesn't get any better from there. That's pretty lucky that they happened to guess that was a solo. That's incredibly lucky, I'm not gonna lie. They get them back, and now when we talk about, remember how we talked about where there was this pulling, by the way, and we talked about this building? The building over here is great positioning, and so is here. Goes to my point, God Spot. Now you may be asking, should I play God Spot early or late? If you play it late, you better have the economy, or you got to have the right team to be able to hunker down and utilize resources properly, right? The example would be, do I have a Loba? Do I have a Watson and half shield economy? Do I have a way to rotate in and out? If you don't have any utility, it's not going to benefit you. So in this scenario, I would pretty much educate everybody and say, what utility do you not have or do have for your squad? Like, let's say with the Wraith, we have the ability here as a caustic to, well, you can hunker down. You have Wraith to give you rotation, and then you have Revenant to push. What is missing in the squad? Economy. You don't have Watson, you don't have Loba. Is that necessary? Depends on how you want to play. There is no right or wrong here. You could say, let's replace the Caustic with a Watson. Is that better or worse? Well, Caustic is arguably better depending on the player, so I probably would want the Caustic. Now you say, well, what if I replace Revenant with Loba for loot? You get support and stuff like that. Was it necessary? Maybe not in this scenario, because they did happen to res still, right? And notice how there's 5 squads remaining. This is where they got most of the points. Now you see that he got 1 extra kill, the Wraith here, and that's the kind of the benefit they got. Top 5 is what you're aiming for, because that's where you get the best bang for your buck. And anything, if you start getting top 3, top 2, top 1, that's where you really start singing with the points. And notice how we had mentioned that this was a God Spot power position, 1 here, 1 there. Look at having this positioning and having height and what that does for you. Amazing. You pretty much got bird's eye view, and you're pretty much guaranteeing yourself at least top 3. This lobby is actually going a little faster than normal, and that's crazy considering we still only have 5 teams remaining. We did see that dog pile, which is kind of happening on the edge, and that's kind of why we saw this awkward encounter, right? So as a recap here, loot efficiently. Know the timetable. Everyone knows it, so don't act surprised when a team gets when you get thirded, essentially. Know that window where, okay, we have the ability to push. Can we be faster? If your team is slow, then be slow. If your team is fast, then be fast. I'm calling this the beginner section because this is really just fundamentals. And fundamentals, they never go out of style. I think watching this video, some people are going to have good reminders that have done ranked for a good while and realize, hey, there are windows that you can push. I'm not saying not to push, okay? Like, let's see, this team down below, this would be a great moment for them to take the building underneath. They don't want to necessarily stay on the bridge. Let's see if they push. They got a knock. I'm surprised that they don't push at least underneath to coexist with them. There's no downside of that. That would be the mistake of the other team. Pretty much letting them reset for free. That's crazy. I mean, it happens. Now this team doesn't have it. I mean, you have to know when to push. That's a window of when you need to push. You get a knock. Can you secure space? Because sure, they can live on that bridge. Let's see if it pays off though. Let's see if them staying on the bridge as a team actually pays off for them or not. And this is another prime example why the Peacekeeper is disgusting. Because even at range like this, charged up, crazy that the choke can actually do that much damage. Absolutely nutty. Now, does it do that much? Probably post 150 meters? Not so much. It doesn't really work out that way. They are starting to run out of resources there, unfortunately. It is very possible that the team on the bridge can actually find an opportunity here and not move. There is that possibility. So I'm going to say that I can be wrong, that as long as you play as a team and make a decision as a team, it's not a bad thing. Because it could just pull out in the open and the people on height could actually end up winning in that scenario. They did drop down for that one team, so that is a little debatable, right? But they did it as a team, so whenever I've always seen coaching, I was like, did you do it as a team? What was your thought process that you went together? And if somebody said, well, I don't know, I was kind of going with it, then you didn't have you weren't proactive and you weren't trying to take everything in your own take control of the situation. If you have a justification and reason, that's a great start. Now what you've got to do is create the pathway and say what is right and what is wrong for your team. Let's see how this plays out. They are potentially going to have to leave sooner than later, but it's a top 3 situation. Realistically, nobody's going to push first here, because if they do, it's kind of a throw once they see that knock, because then the team that engages last most likely is going to win. Most likely, but it's kind of unknown. Man, they're getting blasted from that angle. That is very unfortunate. They were split here. They probably either should have taken the bottom together or taken the top. I probably would have recommended taking the top and then pretty much like bullying them across the way. That is kind of a strange decision, but you know, hey, notice how once they spread out and they weren't playing as a team, that's whenever it became an issue, right? Same thing with this Revenant. He goes up by himself. What if he gets eliminated, right? He made a play. They got his angle. And now we're kind of seeing the end game here. This is where patience, the window of opportunity to push starts to go down because it's less justifiable to push. Oh my gosh, that Revenant almost threw there. Whenever you know that teams are nearby. And that's the difference between early KP and late KP. Does this team have a lot of KP? They probably got this mostly at the end. And that's all that matters. Having the low ground's not ideal, but if they get a nice crack here, oh, then that could be over. Come on, come on. Yeah, he's by himself now. It's unfortunate. If they singled out, I'm surprised he didn't just jump on the lifeline there. Probably could have gotten the lifeline out. But if you guys enjoyed this episode, fundamentals, very basic in what we're seeing here. We're seeing consistent loadouts. We're seeing consistent rotations. I mean, this is pretty much how lobbies are playing out. How is this guy Masters in a Plat and Gold lobby? What am I seeing here? I could have sworn at the start this is just Plat and Diamond. I wanted to go back in the footage. Well, if you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. If you guys enjoyed this, let me know, because I think this was really helpful to get back to fundamentals. And I'm going to title it that. Fundamentals and Ranked. See you guys on the next one.